Yeah, synchronous learning is great. But the kids aren't coming anymore.
This is not going to be easy, but you want to get greater attendance and participation in your synchronous session, right? I wish I could give you a magical solution, but we know that solution won't work for everyone. So I'm going to look at how these 6 characteristics, focus, prior knowledge, curiosity, creativity, choice, and accessibility, play into your synchronous learning success. And hopefully you'll have some ideas to think about and suggestions to try by the end. Centering your focus in online teaching is no different than if you were teaching in your classroom, but you want to be careful that you have more than just a topic. Your focus should include the topic, a clear objective, or learning target. There's no need to get technical here, but you want to set the expectation for what students will know or be able to do as a result of that synchronous session. Consider sharing your objective with students prior to the lesson and have them identify realistic expectations. They might surprise you. And your theme or objective plays directly into the teacher and student gains. Now, what do you expect to gain from the lesson? Maybe to know what prior knowledge students have, to see who's completed the reading, introduce a new unit, or practice a new skill, and find out who needs more help. But your objective should provide a clear path to you gaining that information. But most likely very different from your anticipated gain. What will the students gain? Don't get me wrong, you're offering knowledge, skills, strategies, power, and that's the purpose of the lesson. But if your overarching goal is to get students to engage and participate in your synchronous learning sessions so that they can obtain all that you have to offer, then you're going to have to keep it as a subliminal message to get them in. The competition is tough. You have a lot of things working against you when it comes to getting kids to attend your online session. There are a couple of ways you can generate student interest and offer incentives to entice and hook kids into attending your session, but you're going to have to rely on your own creativity and imagination. Kids are drawn to competitions, so anywhere you can build competitiveness, do it. Just make sure you're not making it too difficult, or you may have kids give up before starting. Pose some what if questions that you could tie into your lesson and challenge kids to create or design something and then compete with each other. Begin before the lesson by giving students an interactive activity to do prior to the lesson. And that could be a poll, a survey, trivia quiz, and then have them wait to get the results at the live session. You could provide them with discussion or journal prompts that will be referenced in the lesson, or you could even assign some sort of costume or prop that they need to bring with them, a background that they need to have that you can later explain or they can explain and tie in. It's time to brush up on your self-marketing skills. And I'm thinking that I see YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok in your future, maybe. If you use any of these platforms to make your own sort of advertisement, you could put teasers in your videos or include hints or clues that you can bring back later during your class session. If you do decide to, as Brene Brown says, brave the wilderness, and I hope you do, get out of your comfort zone. Be silly and put yourself out there because this is really what you're asking them to do too. So make sure that the language, the media, organization, everything that you've included is centered around the student as opposed to the content. And an example of what this might look like is to have students post a status update and picture from a perspective of a historical figure or character in a book. But rather than just having them write or post from the character or historical figure's perspective, have them focus the post on a current event or element of pop culture so students can bring their own experiences into the mix. So they'd still be responding as that character, but to a current day situation. You can have them justify the connection that they've made later, and this might even be during a discussion. Make sure your media is relevant. Don't include a funny YouTube video or popular GIF just because. You should be able to make a clear connection between the media and your objective. And don't give them everything in the pre-show, because that will only generate disappointment. Lastly, follow through with what you've offered, because kids will be on to false advertising and fake news. And you may get them in once, but not ever again. Prior knowledge plays a more significant role in digital learning than traditional in-class learning because we communicate with students differently when we are remote. We are limited to being able to gauge student comfort, understanding, and attention, and students are limited in getting the quick answers or having you fill in the blanks. This could potentially diminish a student's ability to move forward within the unit. There are two ways you can approach your synchronous learning session in relation to prior knowledge. The first is by planning ahead and preparing the necessary materials to support or scaffold your lesson. Remember Vygotsky's zone of proximal development? That's where you want your students. Surely you know ways to pre-assess or use formative data to gauge a student's zone in relation to your content. In digital learning, you need to add to this pre-assessment students' prior knowledge and comfort with the technology. So you can have a balance between the two. Combining a ZPD lesson with a ZPD technology task will result in cognitive overload. Well, there's your psychology lesson for the day. Knowing how difficult all that differentiation can be, there is another approach to accessing prior knowledge. Use your synchronous session to build the prior knowledge. And what's great about this plan is that it gives students the exact information you know they need to continue with the unit, and it's a great way to incorporate some fun. Online games and quiz sites are a great option here, and the fact that the content is prior knowledge makes the session low stakes. It's okay for kids if they don't know, if they're not getting them right, because that's the purpose of the lesson. Now, you will still have students missing out, some that won't come the first time because I'm sure they'll come after. Many of these educational gaming sites allow students to play outside of class. So what they'd really be missing out on is the live interaction and competition with their classmates. If you have a couple rewards in there, then they're really going to feel like they're missing out. At the end, ask all students, those who were in the session and those who are doing it by themselves at home, to fill out a survey or answer a reflection question that will identify the topics or concepts that they didn't know. You can use these results then to help direct your planning and know where to start in your unit. The 3 C's: curiosity, creativity, and choice. These often go hand in hand and play into each other. Chances are, if you're providing one, you're providing at least two, if not all three. Curiosity can be built before the lesson as part of the hook to get kids to join in. Earlier, I mentioned using polls, surveys, questionnaires, or trivia questions prior to the session, and waiting until the session to reveal the answers or winners. I also suggested posting teasers, and these may be in the form of a riddle or be parts of a puzzle that they can't completely solve until they attend the session. Even a simple hangman could work. Lastly, you could try soul-style questions, and that's SOLE. These are big idea questions that even Google can't answer. For example, why do humans make music? Have students brainstorm answers and anticipate hearing what their classmates have to say. You can find soul questions at startsoul.org, or you can even plan a whole lesson there. Are you questioning your own creativity? It's possible you're making the common correlation between being creative and being artistic, because they are not the same thing. Being creative is creating different ways, better or not, to do things. So to really show off your creative flair, look for ways to include student imagination and encourage collaboration. Think of things that they can create at home, away from the screen, and then share with classmates. Going back to posing questions and problems, have students create solutions, develop them, describe them, and then debate them during your session. Lastly, engage students in critical thinking around evaluation and providing feedback. Feedback for you, for their peers, or for themselves. Just let them create new or better ways for next time. There will be times when choices are limited, but look for ways to implement choice as much as possible. When students have choice, they become empowered. So brainstorm ways that the choices you give students can lead to opportunities and possibilities. If you want to offer choice in the prerequisite work, consider giving multiple prompts or questions to ponder before the live session. Encourage students to choose just one, but think deeply on that one and generate some follow-up questions or details to support a response. You could then let them facilitate the discussion when it gets to that prompt. If it suits, let students choose which live sessions to attend, or whether they attend the live session or complete an independent assignment. In other words, if you like blank, join Monday's synchronous session. If blank is more your style, join Wednesday's session. Or come to my live lesson and you won't have to do blank. Offer different examples, types of practice, or a different style of teaching so students' choice is based on the content more than the timing. Better yet, have students organize and co-host the lesson. Going back to those surveys, polls, and quizzes, let students' votes or answers select the topic, format, problems, or gains. Phrase the surveys, polls, and quizzes so that students need to do a little pre-exploration of the content in order to really give their answer. And then provide them with the resources for this, and you'll have a really good head start. You can offer choices during the live lesson as well, such as choosing partners or groups for breakout rooms, methods of participation. For example, do they want to respond with audio, video, chat, notes, or again, choosing the live versus the recorded lesson. Now, of course, the live lesson has an added bonus. Tune in to find out what it is. Online learning is just as awkward and uncomfortable for many students as it may be for you. So allowing them to partner up with friends will help increase their comfort level as well as give them new ways to learn from each other. Allowing students to choose between audio, video, and chat responses will also improve participation. And it's fair then to expect them all to participate. Chances are students will get more out of the live session. If nothing else, they'll get the social emotional interaction with you and the other students. And then there's the added bonus, whatever you decide it should be, that can always be given to the students viewing the recording. They'll just be getting it a little bit later. I want to provide you here with some suggestions for what you could do during your synchronous learning session versus what you might want to avoid. And this is all based on choosing those that lead to curiosity, creativity, and choice, while also keeping timing, motivation, and engagement in mind. I've included 9 suggested formats for your lesson, and certainly you don't have to limit yourself to these 9, but they include storytelling, real-world problem solving or exploration, contests, competitions, games, group work, and guided practice, multimedia, scavenger hunts, and simulations. And I'm not going to go into detail for each of these, but there are many ideas and samples that you can find online related to these different suggestions. Now, the waste basket represents time wasted. So here are some lesson formats that you really want to try to avoid for your synchronous session. Lecture and lesson delivery are both easily accomplished through asynchronous audio or video learning. So have students complete these parts of a unit on their own. In times where you can't get around it, limit the lecture or lesson delivery to short parts because you don't want to lose their interest. Whole class discussion is difficult in the online classroom. Students may not be able to see each other and they may have trouble hearing each other, and they're not going to get as much out of this type of discussion. There are several other discussion structures that can be interactive and easily applied online. You probably know some like a fishbowl, this or that, two truths and a lie, train your grandma, teach your grandpa. These are a few. The key to your discussion structure is that it requires participation from everyone. You want to establish rules for your discussion or create a rubric to encourage and keep track of participation. I've included a link to an article that describes some of these different discussion activities at the end of the video. So practice. In itself, it is a great activity to do during a synchronous session, but do not plan to use the entire time to do practice because this is another pre-lesson activity you can have students do. Instead, reserve lesson time for students to ask questions. have them post their questions in advance. That way you can prepare thorough answers. You know what the most frequent questions are, or you know which questions are most important and the gaps that you need to fill. And this will really maximize your time and allow you to meet more students' needs at once because your attention will be on all of them, not just one student. You may model different ways to solve a problem, provide shortcuts or additional information, extend a previous lesson, or point students to additional resources, and then also give them a chance to apply that new information. Lastly, like lectures and lessons, videos can be viewed before the live session. So when giving the video before the lesson, you can give them look-fors or prompts to answer. They could use a Padlet, Socrative, or a shared document while viewing, and you can then pull those Padlets, the document up during your discussion to be part of your discussion. If you haven't already, try Edpuzzle or PlayPosit because these programs allow you to add questions or commentary right in the video. If you are including a video in your synchronous session, whether it's more than 5 minutes or not, look for ways to make viewing the video interactive. Students could respond or post comments in the public chat while the video is playing, and students may have questions or a multiple choice quiz to answer as the video plays. Or they may use the emoji status updates to indicate where they agree or disagree, where things are clear, confusing, important, or not. I'm using the word accessibility to refer to meeting the needs of all learners, not just those with special needs. Digital learning puts more accountability and independence on students, which is a good thing, no doubt, but for many kids, navigating the technology and the internet can be exhausting and full of dead ends for them. So you need to prepare for possible roadblocks. Before your lesson, in an attempt to lessen the cognitive load for your students, give them some things to fall back on. Remind them of the day and time. Repost directions on how to access your conference. List materials that they may need for the lesson, like paper, pencil, or textbook. Don't make the prerequisite work too difficult. If you have a real stumper, post it before as a bonus or a challenge. That way you'll have some students attempt it and that will build curiosity, but the students having difficulty will know that you showed them how to solve it during this session. Reach out to students who you know or predict will struggle and provide them with scaffolds or accommodations for the pre-work and to go over what they need to do on the day of the lesson. Set guidelines or instructions on how students should enter class, and no, it is not too late to do this. And with all of this in place, start on time. Try something interactive as students enter class so that no one's just waiting for others to arrive, because this is potentially awkward and maybe has silence or cheesy small talk. A last thing on timing. Consider meeting with smaller groups for a shorter period of time. At different times, of course. Even though you have less time, the small group may make the session more productive. And you can also provide differentiated instruction and material before, during, and after the lesson. And this will be particularly helpful for your gifted and special education students. During your lesson, what's most important is that you explain and add relevance. Make connections for students so that they understand how everything in the lesson connects to all of the different parts and to them. Real-world scenarios or connections will make the lesson interesting and will build curiosity. Plan your session by chunking the parts and organizing them so that they switch between easy and challenging. And allow transition time, but not too much. If you're moving between breakout rooms or activities, give pre-written notes or skeletons for students to fill in, and then encourage them to use maybe the status updates or emojis to show whether they're confused or have a question. Throughout the lesson, look for ways to acknowledge, praise, or reward student participation. One of the things you're looking for students to do most is not only get there, but also participate. So you want them to feel good about the impact and the effect that they have on the class. final thing to consider in your synchronous lesson is the role of technology. Run through the types of technology students will need to provide necessary supports. Be wary of how many websites, programs, apps, or media examples you include in a single lesson. Toggling and balancing between these different options will inevitably result in some lost students. If after planning around the 6 criteria, your lesson is a true success, awesome. You now have the even bigger challenge of maintaining that success and outdoing yourself each week. If your well-planned lesson is not as in sync as you were hoping, welcome to where the rest of us are. Finally, after your lesson, and it's no reason to give up, share your reflection with students. Let them know that things didn't go as planned. You could say, I tried to include blank to do blank, but it didn't work. Do you guys have any suggestions for next time? It's important for them to see that you're not a natural at this either, and that it's a part of the process to make mistakes. After your lesson, send feedback to students. As a class, as small groups, individually, online, over the phone, by mail, however you like. But the feedback you send should acknowledge their participation in the huge part that they play in making the class a success. So check in with those who need more help or may need some more practice. Connect the dots for all students, again, to emphasize how these different parts of your lesson are all connected. Connect your synchronous session to the asynchronous lesson, and then also to themselves. Continue to drop clues and hints. They may only make sense to those who are in the session. It'll be like your own private joke. And this is a great way of igniting FOMO, the fear of missing out. Now, you're not looking to shame anyone or be exclusive, but just a small touch of FOMO may be what you need to grab the attention of some more students. Thanks for watching. I know this was a long one. There was a lot of information in here, and I really hope that there was something that you're going to go back and try. If you have any questions, if you want to collaborate, you know where to find me.